Hello and welcome to God in Film, the podcast where a Christian and an atheist dive into the best that cinema has to offer and see if we can find any parallels with the gospel or any other Bible stories. I'm writer and Tom Hardy body double, Giles Goff.
And I'm test engineer and Olympic-level northerner, Phil Coleman.
And for this very special episode, we're looking at La Sortie de Louis Lumiere à Lyon, or Workers Leaving the Lumière Factory. The 1895 classic produced and directed by Louis Lumiere, often referred to as the first film ever. Phil, what do you think of this film?
Well, the word think is sort of difficult for me here. Like, it's such an emotional film. It's really tied up with my childhood as well. When I was 8, 100%. For example, my dad took me down to London to see it at the BFI.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I don't know. I just thought this is a magical moment between me and my dad.
Yeah.
I've always loved cinema, and to be able to share an experience of seeing the first film ever with my dad, that's just beautiful.
That's really interesting because for me, the person who introduced it to me was my nanny, God rest her soul. I mean, you met her, didn't you? You know, I mean, if that woman was passionate about anything, it was her grandchildren, her scone recipe, and the history of cinema from its inception through to the instigation of the Hays Code.
The amount of times that she was talking about the Hays Code, you know, you couldn't get stop about it in between eating the biscuits. You know, it was
my goodness.
It was something else.
Woman was absolutely mad for some pre-code cinema. You know,
absolutely.
So she got hold of an old VHS copy that was passed around the village. You know, he showed to all the kids.
Of course he would.
And showed it to me when I was like 7 years old. And it just opened my eyes, you know, like that moment when women start coming out of those warehouse doors and you think you know what's going on.
Yeah.
Then, like, that dog wanders into the shot and, like, this is crazy. Then it goes...
How did they even get that dog to go past that door? Do you know what I mean?
It comes out of frame, it leaves, it comes back, and like, you're gripping the edge of your seat. And I think you know what I'm going to say next.
No, do it. Say it, though.
When the horse comes out, pulling the carriage...
The damn horse. Like, no one saw that coming. It was revolutionary at the time, you know?
Honestly, that was pure, uncut, cinematic heroin. I did not need any more fizzy pop that day. I was bouncing off the walls as it was.
Absolutely. You know, I used to quite enjoy Panda Pops at the time, but I've never been able to chase that dragon. It's always been this film for me to get that high again.
And on top of that, you then find out that he filmed the same thing in spring, summer, and winter. Like, there's a whole Workers Leaving the Lumiere Factory cinematic universe.
It's the WLT. LFCU, as it's colloquially known as by scholars. I mean, we all know this anyway, but bears repeating.
Yeah. I mean, everybody knows that. Like, those Lumiere brothers came out of the gate hot and just straight up took over the game before anyone else had a chance to even work out what was going on.
No,
you know?
well, let's talk about, like, you know, it's like Boyhood before it was Boyhood. You know, they recorded it 100%. In summer, winter, spring. Yeah. You know, they use a whole year of their lives.
That is a brilliant parallel. I never even thought of that.
Thank you.
Now, we've got to address the elephant in the room. Is this actually the first film ever made? Well, strictly speaking, no. As with so many things, failure is an orphan, but success has many fathers. So Thomas Edison, Louis Le Prince, Georges Lumiere, all had significant roles to play in the evolution of cinema. Whilst I believe that this was the first film for many years, I later found out that the Roundhay Garden scene, filmed in 1888 by Louis Le Prince, was, and then going even further back than that, there's Horse in Motion by Edward Meyeridge in 1878.
I mean, another absolute, you know, classic tension piece there as well.
Absolute banger.
Like horror before it was even horror, really.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's funny you mentioned horror because I learned about that from Jordan Peele's Nope.
Of course, yeah.
So, okay, whilst Workers Leaving the Lumiere Factory might not strictly be the first film ever, and it lacks the high-octane thrill ride of train arriving into the station, which came out later.
I mean, I absolutely cacked my pants when I first saw that. I was like, at least get out of the room, there's a train. You know what I mean? Like,
it was brown trousers time for all of us, you know?
Seriously.
But despite all of that, this will always be the first film in my heart.
I agree. I think any scholar would agree with you there, actually.
Yeah. Now it's time for a guest. So, Phil, quick question for you. I'm going to ask you the name of one particular character in this film. You ready?
Go for it.
What is the name of the woman who runs diagonally across the path of the other workers at around about the 20-second mark of this film?
Oh, right, yeah. That's Celine LePlanc. I thought you were going to give me a difficult one. I mean, come on.
Yes, you're right. It is Celine LePlanc, and you are going to lose your mind on this one because we found the son of Celine LePlanc. We tracked him down.
No way.
I seriously, I kid you not, okay?
This is even better than the Exorcist episode.
I know, right? Now, of course, he doesn't speak any English. I don't speak any French. So we got my wife Claire to translate for us.
Brilliant.
Let's have a listen.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Pierre Leblanc.
Hello, my name is Pierre Leblanc. My mother was Celine Leblanc, who featured in the 1895 classic La Sortie de Lumière à Lyon.
Pierre, thank you so much for joining us today. I cannot tell you how much we appreciate it. Let's get straight into it. What can you tell us about your mother's involvement in the making of this classic piece of cinema?
Voulez-vous coucher avec moi?
Well, for her, it was really quite a whirlwind. One day, she is just a simple factory girl working in the Lumière factory in Lyon. That's where she met my father, you know. When the filming actually happened, people paid very little attention. Monsieur Lumiere really wanted a veritas approach to his early phases of filmmaking. Also, literally no one had ever seen a film camera before, so they didn't really know what to do with it. Monsieur Louis shot the film in August 1894, but it wasn't screened to the public until 22nd of March 1895. But after that point, everything changed. Before she really knew what was happening, my mother was being hounded by paparazzi, all begging her to run diagonally across people's paths. It became her signature move. Eventually, the Lumiere brothers had to arrange for private transport for her to get to work in order for her to stop being mobbed by adoring fans and autograph hunters.
Fantastic. Must have been a big transition. And I'm sure you get asked this all the time, but your mother just brings such a life and vivacity to the picture with that energetic little run she does. Did she ever tell you why she was in such a hurry?
Actually, yes. My mother had been feeling quite unwell that afternoon. And when the whistle blew, signalling the end of the day, all the hustle and bustle began to make her feel very unwell indeed. As she was heading to the exit, she knew she was going to be sick. And when she realised that she might be sick in front of her employer, Monsieur Louis, as well as her co-workers, she ran as fast as she could to find somewhere more discreet to be sick. It was that evening she discovered she was with child. Me.
Hold on, Pierre. Are you saying that you appeared in that film as a fetus and are in fact the last surviving cast member of this film?
Yes.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that fascinating revelation with us. It's so insightful.
You are welcome. Now, if you'll excuse me, I must get back to my vineyard.
So, Phil, that was Pierre LePlanc. What do you think?
Vincent Cassel. I'm sorry. You have to give me a minute. Voulez-vous coucher avec moi? Jacques Cousteau. Yeah, so it was. I cannot believe that indirectly he was a cast member in that film. I mean, obviously he wasn't on screen. He was behind a certain wall, you could say. But definitely. That was so insightful. Just to, especially knowing that he, his mum as well. Was feeling sick at the time as well, and that's why she was in such a rush. That kind of method acting. It's just something you don't get as much these days. To actually just get pregnant and just be 100%. Sick. I
just feel like it completely unwrapped a complete mystery for us that has been plaguing cinema for the last 128 years.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I for one feel like we've broken new ground here, and I mean, I'm not saying, could anyone hear annals of history?
You're not getting this kind of nonsense on Kermode and Mayo, I'll tell you that for nothing,
Step up your game, Mayo, or Kermode.
Yeah. I was doing the numbers on this. Pierre LePlanc has to be 128 years old. And, for us, that's quite impressive. But, you think, well, obviously he's French, so, their diet on the continent is different. It's much more sort of like olive oil and wine and stuff like that. Just absolutely amazing, those guys. You know what I mean?
No, I've got to say their constitution is something different. They're genetically superior, I think.
100%. Now it's time for finding the faith in the film. So obviously, as I'm sure you've guessed, this film, it just works on so many different levels, doesn't it?
No, of course it does. I'm looking forward to hearing what your take is on this particular one.
So, like a feminist perspective, you might take a note how many women are coming out of that factory, suggesting the hidden history of women and their importance in the very earliest days of cinema.
Absolutely.
If you wanted to take an anti-capitalist look at this, you could see how many of these workers are spewing out the factory doors and how so many of them are forgotten, all in the service of the great man of history theory,
Yeah, absolutely.
But today, as is our wont, we're going to be looking at the spiritual side of things, and there are tons of parallels there. Now, I mean, frankly, these are so obvious, I almost feel like I don't even need to be here for these. I think you could probably come up with these all on your own, couldn't you?
Maybe, but I do enjoy hearing you tell them. So,
cheers, man.
That's
cheers,
all right.
Man. I really appreciate that. So, firstly, we see these workers being concentrated in one small area, and then they're all leaving and going off into different parts of the city.
Yeah, of course.
So. This is a bit like the start of Acts when the disciples begin to spread the word of Jesus. They're all sort of squished in Jerusalem, you know.
I wouldn't have made that connection,
no?
Really. No. Like, I do see where you're coming from, that act of exiting one room, going out into the big wide world, sort of spreading the word there. It's not entirely obvious.
Right, okay.
But yeah, no, that's fascinating.
Yeah, definitely. So you really get that sense of just them going to like Judea, Samaria, and all four corners of the globe. You get that real sense of and just the urgency of it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, well, speaking as an atheist, of course, because all atheists,
You're an atheist.
Yeah, well, no, I keep it quite quiet, but we all stay in as well. We don't actually go out at all. So it's sometimes hard to visualize that. So I'd have to live vicariously through your faith in that respect.
Yeah. Secondly, on a metaphorical level, it is not hard to see how this film works as a metaphor from being freed from sin. You know what I mean when I say that Friday feeling, right?
Every Friday.
Because this film just totally exudes that. You spent all week toiling away in drudgery for someone else. You don't have control over what you do. And then when the clock just finally hits 5:30 and you're just out of there, you're free.
Like a shot. It's like you're in a pinball machine and you're the ball. And
100%.
And you're just having that thing pulled back, and as soon as 5:30 comes, that player has left that ball fly, you know?
100%. You can do what you want for like the next 2 and a bit days anyway. And that is like just the faintest reflection of what it's like being trapped in the drudgery of sin, going into the grace and the freedom of God's love. And there's absolutely nothing like it. And for my money, there's no film that encapsulates that better than this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, to be honest. It's good to see that a film is as brave as that, really.
Yeah.
To be able to really, dive into something as impenetrable sometimes for people who may not be of faith in that respect. I don't know if that's been done since.
I don't think so, buddy. And that concludes our Finding the Faith in the Film section. We have some reviews.
Yay!
I say reviews plural. It's more like reviews singular.
Just the one, then.
Yeah, I don't want to bore people, We have a 5-star review from Dave from Tesco on Apple Podcasts.
Oh, what a guy.
He's going to go down in history for some of this stuff. Let's check this out. Good hosts, good takes, interesting to listen to, and my RS teacher features occasionally. If only they had named it Deus Ex Cinema. Oh well. Honestly though, 5 stars. Love it. And Dave, where on earth were you when I was thinking up the planning for this series,
Deus Ex Cinema.
Deus Ex Cinema. That's really flipping clever. Problem is though, Dave, podcast titles have to work the same as like Edinburgh Fringe show titles and porn titles. They have to be very easy to search, and they've got to really grab your attention right from the start.
They've kind of got to be like Ron Seal in that respect.
The God in Film podcast. It does what it says on the tin.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that is us done for this very special episode. Phil, have you had a good time?
Do you know something? This is one of my favourite films of all time. I have been... You know how many times I've asked you if we could do this film.
Mate, you wouldn't shut up about it.
No. Well, I'm very passionate about it. So thank you very much for finally being able to fit this into a season. I really appreciate it, mate. I had a great time.
You're so welcome. Okay, listeners, join us again very, very soon for our Easter special episode. In the meantime, April Fools!
Ah!
God in Film is hosted and created by Giles Goff and
Phil Coleman.
Mixing and editing by Giles. Our logo was designed by
Julie Walsh.
And our theme tune was composed by
Rick Lee.
Fact-checking by Kaiser Soze. Gaudio Film is a Dash production. Please rate and review. Unless you didn't like my French, in which case, yeah, do you know what? That's fair. I can't blame you. Listen, guys, if you made it this far, then thank you for indulging in our nonsense. Have a great weekend.